I'm honored to be elected leader of the Conservative Party. Thank you for putting your trust in me to lead and deliver for our great country. That was UK's Liz Truss opening statements on her election as Prime Minister and the party leader. But what kind of country will she inherit? Is she aware of the depth of the economic problems that the UK is facing? And more importantly, how to deal with it? Well, in this edition of the Spotlight, we will look at the challenges that the new PM faces and also look at how the UK has fared under the Conservative Party as a whole. First, to get some reactions from what is happening there in the UK, our correspondent from London, Said Pourza, joins us. We'll say that at this point, the verdict is in terms of what has occurred. Tell us how people there are reacting to this, and of course, maybe briefly about what Liz Truss has said in her opening remarks of accepting this.
Well, the general public is divided really along Queen, who thought that Rishi Sunak was more clear-eyed on the economy, as you would expect a chancellor to be, and then others who supported Liz Truss because of what people would call boosterist economic plans, her package of support for those in need to try and mitigate the blow from the soaring cost of living and skyrocketing energy prices. But the fact of the matter is that Liz Truss is faced with a formidable task, a formidable inbox. You're looking at skyrocketing that is almost nearly certainly in recession. You have the war in Ukraine, you have the unfinished business of Brexit, and also the Scottish independence ambitions. All of those things with a very short runway for Liz Truss between before elections. Whether or not she will be able to deliver on those is a question that only time will answer. And perhaps another reason why she was selected by that small minority of the British electorate, the members of the Conservative Party, that number between 160,000 to 200,000, was that they were looking probably for someone as ambitious as Liz Truss, who could perhaps, in their view, could unite a deeply divided party, especially in the wake of years, and also deliver on these economic plans, as she said in her acceptance speech, deliver, deliver, deliver. We heard that word so many times. Whether or not she will be able to do that is something, as I say, is a matter of time. But also on the question of unifying the party that remains very divided, she now belongs, although a former Liberal Democrat, belongs to the right end of the Conservative Party. Of course, we'll see her announce her cabinet in the next 24 hours or so, and the makeup of that cabinet will tell you whether or not she is a unifying figure or a divisive one. And so, again, these are the things that really led to her victory. And also, as I say, people are divided on whether or not she will be able to deliver in the coming 2 years.
Thank you so much for that. Said Pourza, our correspondent from London. Let me now introduce our guest for this edition of the Spotlight. Robert Oulds joins us. He's the Executive Director at Impact International, who joins us from London. Also joining us, Tony Gosling, historian and journalist, who joins us from Gloucestershire. Didn't pronounce that right. Okay, very good. Robert Oulds, welcome. Let me first start with you. I was trying to find some positive comments on Liz Truss's nomination here, going through online media, but I was not able to find many. I'm wondering what camp you are in terms of what has occurred, her nomination to be the Prime Minister.
Well, there is an opinion poll out there which says that of all the possible people who would have been leader of the Conservative Party and, of course, Prime Minister, the one best placed and the only one able to, and actually possibly likely to, beat Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, the leader of the Labour Party, is Liz Truss. She has, to a degree, connected with the British public. Of course, the British public are still yet to learn a lot about her. And of course, Liz Truss is someone who's been on a political journey throughout most of her life, and it's led her to a position now where she is the Brexiteers' choice as leader of the Conservative Party and a Prime Minister. And of course, she's connected with many people who are culturally conservative, that do not go, to people who do not subscribe to some of the bizarre views that emanate from certain sections of the society. She's quite, in a sense, conservative socially as well, in terms of having common sense beliefs regarding issues to do with gender. So this is actually some very good signalling that she's done. It's connected with the public, and that's one of the reasons why she is now set from tomorrow to become Prime Minister succeeding Boris Johnson.
Okay. Tony Gosling, I think you'll agree that one of the first things that Liz Truss needs to do overall is, and who knows how she's going to go about this, is to tackle the cost of living crisis. I mean, that's a huge mammoth of a task. Do you think that she is up for it? Correspondent, however, made a good point that she's going to introduce her cabinet tomorrow. But we have to wait and see who she will introduce. But overall, how do you see things?
Well, I don't think she's got really any solutions to the cost of living crisis, and she doesn't want to have them. I think the game she's playing is that she wants to concentrate on foreign affairs, a bit like they do in the United States, in order to try and distract the public from their incompetence at home. But she's definitely not the Brexiteers' choice for Prime Minister. She's originally a Remainer. And there's a survey done by YouGov last week looking at who Conservative voters want. And Liz Truss was the bottom out of the three. They gave them the chance to look at either Boris Johnson to come back, or to have Rishi Sunak, or Liz Truss, and she's right down the bottom. And the reason that was 18%. Rishi Sunak had a 20%, and Boris nearly 50%. So there's a big impetus within the Conservative Party and amongst Tory voters that's saying actually neither of these candidates are better than Boris Johnson. They're looking at the next general election, who they think has got the charisma to win and fight that election, and they believe that Boris has it. Now, Boris has got other plans. The deep state may also have other plans for Boris to go and become Secretary General of NATO, tempt him away from the fight with a big job like that. But the problem with Liz Truss is she's actually not very smart. She's a bit like a kind of ventriloquist dummy who will say whatever is put in front of her. We had a horrible showing of her. This is as part of the campaign, at the beginning of the campaign, where she was trying to find her way out of a press conference room, but she didn't know the exit. But she was trying to tough it out as if she did. Now, this is a very and she looked really stupid trying to get out of this room, but she didn't actually know the way out, and she was trying to pretend she did. Look, this is a very dangerous kind of psychology to have in a prime minister that tries to pretend they know what they're doing when they don't. I don't think Liz Truss is going to be in charge. She will be being told what to do by the financial oligarchs and the people who are really in charge, and her script will be being written for her. She will have something. And she had this, as we saw at the Foreign Office, when she was at the Foreign Office, something called imposter syndrome, where people find themselves in jobs they're not really capable of, and yet they try to, tough it out. They try to, they're basically completely reliant on their advisors. Now, the Tory MPs, by the way, at the weekend, there was a plot revealed in the Mirror newspaper here. There's a whole load of Tory MPs out there who are not happy about Truss winning either. They will, of course, for the cameras, for the time being, saying, oh, yes, we support her, we have unity. They're, of course, hoping for jobs in her cabinet. But there's a MP's plot to bring back Boris in a winter vote. That's what they're saying anyway. Liz Truss is not very bright, they say, and has poor judgment. She has little empathy, and she sees everything in financial terms, which is dangerous. What that means is she's amoral. Her values are financial, they're not moral.
Okay, go ahead. Robert Ould, go ahead.
Rishi Sunak, who's an ex-Goldman Sachs man and as Chancellor of the Exchequer, actually put up taxes on the least well-off, targeting national insurance, essentially a jobs tax, on the least well-off. He was all part of the redistribution of wealth from the poorest to the very richest in society with his lockdown and, of course, the measures which created an inflationary boom, which essentially, again, a tax on those who are the least well-off. So he was very close to the financial centre, of course, having worked for them, and of course, didn't actually produce the goods for the economy that we hoped. What we do need is some somewhat experimentation, relaxation of excessive regulations. We need to get businesses moving. We need to open up the earth to get at the shale gas and, of course, the coal reserves, which Britain has in abundance, but have hardly been touched since the 1990s. And we need to become energy independent. And that would be one of the steps to taking the measures needed to reduce the price of energy, which is largely behind the substantial cost of living crisis, which is hitting people now.
Go ahead, Tony Gosling.
Britain has a major problem in that we don't actually have any proper regulation. What we're seeing now, I mean, over in France, by the way, the government has regulated the energy companies to minimise these price increases. But here in Britain, we just let them price fix. We let them charge whatever they want.
We had a cost. We had a cost cap, and it was the part of the cost cap structure was that it was alleviated over time, and it's just the cost cap has been reduced and got rid of at a time when, of course, energy prices have become soaring. So we do have a regulated energy sector. What we need to do is have more competition.
The regulation is zero. These powerful energy companies are running the show. They are actually
absolutely. We need to break them up. Absolutely.
They cannot do.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to increase supply. We need of the resources that we have in the UK, rather than
well, how much time will that take?
Gas and energy from overseas.
You talk about shale gas. Footprint. You talk about shale gas, Robert Oulds. Aside from the fact that that's an environmental hazard, let's put that aside. You disagree, okay? But how much time will that take in order for this drilling or whatever technical approach is for shale to be extracted? In terms of the duration of time, are we looking at the resources being there, A, and B, of course, for it to actually get executed?
Well, one of the reasons why energy is so high is because, of course, there is profiteering from the energy companies, and this is a worldwide phenomenon. One of the aspects we can do is, of course, break them up, but a lot of the time, energy is bought in advance and futures are bought. If we were to send powerful signals out that there's going to be an increase in supply, then the long-term cost of energy will come down. There's we can increase exploration in the North Sea. We can increase the number of licenses and what can be extracted. There needs to be a whole set of supply side and demand changes as well. That we need a radical reform of how the economy has been structured, because
forget about green energy then. Very well. Let me ask you, Tony Gosling.
Yeah, a really simple solution would be to bring these back into public ownership, that run them more openly, and also to have government department. Up until the Thatcher years, we never had these sorts of problems with gas prices because we had something called gas boards that used to sell gas to the public at the same price as it came out of the ground. There was no casino in futures and derivatives and people betting on the price of gas going up and down.
We're not energy independent. We're reliant on a worldwide market and the worldwide price of gas that
we got to move on past the energy
relying on electricity.
Let's move on past this.
Well,
let's move on past this, and I'm going to kind of ask my energy question and try to apply it to other areas where Tony Gosling, she comes out and she says, within 1 week, I will make sure that there is an announcement on how we're going to deal with the issue of energy bills, and I'm sure she's got plans within that short time frame of announcements. Why didn't she make those announcements under Boris Johnson earlier?
Well, look, the most amazing thing about this contest between Sunak and Truss is that they haven't actually told anyone what they're going to do. And actually, although Rishi Sunak did make an attempt to do it, Liz Truss has said, well, just hang on, and once I'm in, I will then tell you what I'm going to do. That isn't a proper election at all, is it? I don't think she's got anything particularly important up her sleeve. The only thing which will make a difference is the government beginning to act. And what bothers me is that the energy companies are completely in charge. charge, and the government doesn't really seem to have any cards on the table. If you remember last year, we had massive fuel shortages in Britain just at the time of the party conferences, and the energy companies wanted us to believe that they couldn't afford to pay drivers to drive to the petrol stations. No, they were sending a very clear message to the politicians in the party conference season who's in charge in Britain. Now, if you actually look at where she's come from, and of course, Russian gas is very cheap. We should be taking that. Of course we should. But she wants to have a confrontation for the Americans with Russia. We don't want to have a war in Europe, a fight in Europe for the Americans. When she went to visit Moscow in February, just before the invasion of Ukraine with the Russian special military operation, she had a conversation with Sergei Lavrov, and he explained that facts just bounced off her. So it's almost like people are waving a hand in front of Liz Truss's face, and there's nobody in. That's because she doesn't understand the issues, and she doesn't feel capable to actually make these decisions at a big international level. The decisions will be being made for her by the City of London, by the big investors, and most importantly, by the people who pay for and fund the Tory party.
Robert Oulds, I want to ask you a question here, and I really to really get an idea from you where the UK stands economically. We know currently there's a lot of factors that have dealt with it, but it's not just the Ukraine conflict that has contributed to this, and it's not just the pandemic which has contributed to the somewhat of a hole that the UK finds itself in economically, but rather even before that. But are we looking at a situation when we take a look at the world economy that is also suffering in many respects? How can this Liz Truss deal with the situation that the UK is dealing with? Do you see a way forward?
Well, there needs to be changes similar to those introduced by Margaret Thatcher, which created a more competitive economy and took Britain out of the doldrums. There was a lot of pain before the success actually started to unfold. There's a number of problems that are indeed worldwide issues that, of course, partly have been self-inflicted by many countries through the oversupply of money, through the lockdown measures and the economic aspects that were used to alleviate the pain the government's forced on the economy by excessive lockdowns. There's also, of course, there is the energy issue as well, and Russia is a factor. But of course, Britain's not going to be as badly hit as other European countries, and the future that Germany is facing, the immediate future, where Russia has essentially stopped gas supplies to Germany, prevent at a time when they would want to be building up their reserves for the winter, means that Britain's got a cost of living crisis, and we've got a cost of the energy crisis as well. Right. But we are going to actually have the energy. Should people actually be able to pay for it? Other European countries may not even have the ability to keep themselves warm this winter, and that is deeply alarming, and that's going to affect everybody.
Tony Gosling, you heard when Robert Oulds said Margaret Thatcher, I saw you shaking your head right away. Go ahead.
Well, look, because Margaret, what we're doing now is we're paying the price for the privatisation, the putting into private hands of the infrastructure of the country that Margaret Thatcher did. But there's another major problem that Liz Truss has got to face here at home, and this is why I think she's going to be focusing
on foreign energy and these environmental measures.
She's going to be focusing on foreign stuff, because she's not dealing with the major problem we've got at our hospitals, which is queues of ambulances waiting outside the hospitals because the hospitals are full. The reason they're full is because we have messed up social care, that there is nowhere for the care people, that it's very difficult to make care arrangements for people to leave hospital. So the hospitals are full to bursting, and the ambulances cannot deliver their patients. They're waiting for sometimes 24 hours outside the hospital. Now, Liz Truss is going to scrap the tax changes which were being introduced by Rishi Sunak to alleviate that and to sort out this social care once and for all. We do have to have a mixed economy. This is key. You've got to have some government stuff, for example, a national health service, I'd like to see nationalised railways.
The energy from abroad at market rates. It doesn't matter
I'd love to be able to finish my sentence. And also water and electricity and gas in public hands. This is infrastructure.
Okay, very well. Let me get Robert Oulds in. He wants to make a statement here. Sorry to interject. Robert Oulds, go ahead.
we certainly need reform in the energy market, but whilst we have measures in place which prevent us producing, the UK producing its own gas and coal, and has political measures in place which are largely subsidising through the taxpayer and higher energy bills inefficient forms of energy production, such as onshore and offshore wind farms, or of course burning wood chips instead of coal, then of course we will be reliant on importing energy from overseas, which will be through an energy market, and we don't control the price for that. So what we need to do, of course, we need to break up these energy companies, have more competition in there in the energy market as well.
That's what we need to do.
So there are solutions. But of course, whilst we buy energy from the international markets, then of course we'll be paying the international price, which is high for everybody at this time, unless of course one does a sweetheart deal with Russia, for instance.
Tony Gosling, go ahead.
Private companies are making. Have you seen the record profits these private companies, energy companies, have been making over the last year? They're the biggest, highest profits ever, and this is all going to the shareholders and the fat cat bosses. That energy should be being supplied at cost.
It's going to pension funds. It's going to it's going to the pension funds, which have invested very heavily in them. So of course, there is profiteering from the energy companies.
Please,
Robert Oulds, hold on a sec. Go ahead, Tony Gosling.
Yeah, I just want to get one point in here about what's going on within the Tory party. And I said at the beginning about the potential leadership election that some Conservatives have quietly told the Daily Mirror before the end of the year. I think it's absolutely deadly serious. A lot of Tory donors, too, are not happy with Liz Truss being in charge. So in a way, there's going to be, I think, a quiet civil war going on within the Conservative Party to remove someone as they see as too dim, too much of a puppet, too incompetent to actually run the country. A petition of nearly 10,000 members.
Let me get Robert Oulds. Sorry, Tony Gosling, because we're fresh out of time. Robert Oulds, you have the last say. Go ahead, Robert Oulds.
Yeah, there will not be a change of leadership before the next election, and Boris will be off enjoying making too much money as a celebrity and a journalist and a writer and giving speeches. And him and his wife, Carrie Johnson, will be enjoying the lifestyle that she would be looking for, and he thinks he deserves as well. Being Prime Minister is too small a job for someone like Boris Johnson, and he'll be looking to do other things. Many people, of course, didn't want Boris to go. It was a cabal that forced him out, and really a media witch hunt against him, where, of course, he broke his own lockdown rules, as did almost everybody else, including the leader of the opposition, but he seemed to have got targeted. But Liz Truss will be leading the Conservative Party into the next election.
We're fresh out of time. Sorry about this.
We'll just have to wait and see.
Thank you, Robert Oulds. Tony Gosling, I'm sorry.
How far can we stretch democracy until the elastic band snaps here in Britain? That's why I think Liz Truss will not last very long.
How much of a stretch can democracy be exerted on when you have 4 in 7 years a Prime Minister in the UK? Okay, very well. Thank you so much, Robert Oulds, Executive Director at Impact International, and Tony Gosling. Thank you very much, historian and journalist. With that, we come to an end for this edition of The Spotlight from Ika Vitahwe. It's goodbye until next time.